Welcome back, everybody, to a very special episode of MLB Tonight. Greg Amsinger joined with Harold Reynolds and Dan O'Dowd. And tonight, what we will be going over, ladies and gentlemen, is the 2023 Swingman Fields Power Rankings brought to you by FantasySP.com. So without further ado, Harold, why don't you start us off with number one?
Yeah, one thing for those watching at home to remember is these rankings are pre-UFA and that some teams could move a spot up or down. But in the case of number one, we all already know who it's going to be, and that's the reigning champs. The St. Louis Cardinals have the number one spot on the power rankings. And listen, folks, this isn't a surprise to anybody. They have 4 hitters in the projected top 10, and outside of their catcher, everybody in that starting lineup is projected inside the top 100. They also kept a devastating pitching staff led by Manoah and Musgrove. The Cardinals also got younger moving off of Real Muto for a very favorable contract in Riley Green, and with the third-ranked farm system in the league, they don't look to be going anywhere anytime soon. They do have a hole at left field, but with a good amount of cap space left, I think Stephen Kwan is a perfect option for them in UFA.
Yeah, Harold, I don't think there's any dispute for number one at all. But listen, at number two, we have the champions of the offseason, the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds not only turned their elite farm into the best farm we've ever seen, they also added many affordable, outstanding major league assets like Shane Bieber, Christian Javier, Luis Robert, and JT Realmuto. They also traded Fernando Tatis for a new star of the franchise in Ronald Acuna. Alongside him leading that lineup is Rafael Devers and Corey Seager, who both look to take steps up this year with the shift ban being put into place. Right next to the new arms is ace Julio Urias, and behind the overpowering front three is Logan Webb, Joe Ryan, and Nick Lodolo. The Reds also have the most money going into UFA, so they can realistically outright purchase whoever they want. With 6 prospects in the top 10, the Reds seem to only get better, and their case for the top spot will only get stronger as generational guys like Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Walker seem not too far on the horizon. The Reds absolutely took care of business this offseason and transformed their Cinderella playoff run into the real deal.
Beautiful stuff here, guys. And hey, at number 3, we have the San Diego Padres. This may seem a bit high, but keep in mind, this is the same team to win the championship in 2021. And while they aren't the force they were, then they have moved to much more affordable sources of fantastic production. Guys like Kevin Gausman, Cedric Mullins, and Nolan Arenado, to name a few. They still have their star with Bo Bichette, but they also have great pieces surrounding him in the lineup like Jazz Chisholm, Will Smith, and Jose Abreu. The pitching staff also has an insane level 4-headed monster with Gausman, as we mentioned, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, and Zach Gallen. The Padres also maintained multiple closers on good teams, acquiring Ryan Presley in a deal with the White Sox. They have a horrific farm ranked dead last, but with money left to spend and a roster this good, they have no reason to invest in the farm system just yet.
After 3 straight 12th place finishes, the New York Mets rank number 4 on the 2023 Power Rankings. We are finally starting to see the guys from that elite farm in the league led by Julio Rodriguez. Having him, Adley Rutschman, Nolan Gorman, Willie Adams, and Spencer Torkelson all on $1 3-year contracts, the Mets have the young core to be competitive. They came into the offseason with a desperate need for pitching, but sending O'Neal Cruz, who was already at a surplus position for them, for the best starter in fantasy in Corbin Burns, and signing Shane McClanahan definitely helped them nullify their need for starting pitching. Outside of the guys we mentioned earlier, the Mets have a great lineup with bounce-back candidates like Matt Olson, Tyler O'Neill, and Max Muncy. We know Ohtani will do Ohtani things and most likely win an MVP. And with Gavin Lux tearing his ACL, the Mets are expected to call up Corbin Carroll to give that lineup another boost. Look out for them in the playoffs this year. They had a take-no-prisoners offseason and are ready to compete for a title.
You know, Dan, the Mets are like the shiny new car, exciting certainly, but let's see how they finish first. Personally, I'm taking our number 5 spot, the Chicago Cubs, over them. Listen, the Cubs won't win any sexy name contests, but they've made the playoffs more often than not with fantastic organizational depth. A lineup lead by Austin Riley and Pete Alonso definitely is one that can go for a title run. For their pitching staff, they seem to have adopted the quantity over quality idea this offseason. The Cubs are saying, fine, you may beat me in ERA, but we're going to make damn sure that we take the wins, saves, and strikeout categories from you. With the newly extended Michael Harris, they look to add another cornerstone to their already very good lineup. After making a fairly deep run into the playoffs last year, I believe they won't stop, and the Cubs are FantasySP.com's sleeper pick to win the championship in 2023. But for right now, they sit at 5 on the power rankings.
Here is where the rankings can be a little difficult, guys, as we have up to maybe 3 or 4 teams who can feasibly compete for that last playoff spot. But number 6 on the 2023 power rankings is the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays ran into a major cap issue this offseason, but navigated around it beautifully. The pitching staff isn't as strong as it was, but it's still very good. Cease and Wheeler make an excellent 1-2 punch. With George Kirby on a $1 3-year deal right behind them, the Rays have built a very respectable new pitching core given their cap situation, and with Andrew Painter on the horizon, it's only getting better. The lineup is great with stars like Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis and some high-ceiling guys like Vinny Pasquantino, O'Neal Cruz, Andres Gimenez, and MJ Melendez. Klass and Duran also form a very formidable bullpen duo, with Duran recently winning the closer role in Minnesota. The Rays did a farm overhaul this offseason as well, trading guys like Zach Veen and Noelvi Marte for draft picks to create a system with more depth. They are ranked with the 4th best farm in the league. Overall, the Rays took a step back, but end up in a much better position than many thought they'd be in, as they rank 6th on the power rankings.
You know what, guys? Harold has his Cubs, but this is my dark horse team. At number 7, we have the Atlanta Braves. The Braves entered an interesting spot this offseason with upwards of 16 roster spots they needed to fill and not a lot of money to do it. Goldschmidt and DeGrom were certainly tough losses, but Brandon Woodruff, Sandy Alcantara, and Luis Castillo are plenty capable of holding down a championship-level pitching staff. Jose Ramirez stays in Atlanta and continues to show why he's a top 5 player in fantasy baseball. Behind him, the Braves have many stars in that lineup like Francisco Lindor, Xander Bogaerts, Byron Buxton, and the newly acquired Marcus Semien. The bullpen is a little bit lacking, but with a lineup and rotation that can compete with the best of them, it's certainly worth the slim bullpen. The Braves also invested a lot in their farm this offseason, getting Tristan Casas to replace Paul Goldschmidt and Hunter Brown to replace Jacob deGrom. But both of those fail in comparison to the Braves selecting Jackson Chourio, with the 3rd overall pick catapulting them to the 5th-ranked farm in the league. The Braves can be an extremely scary matchup for anyone to face in the playoffs, and if they make it, I think they'll go far. Back to you, Harold.
Thanks, Dan. You know what, guys? This may be a year early for them to really do any damage, but they can still compete with the top dogs. At number 8, we have the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays have the young talent needed to form a championship core. We just need to see them each take a step forward. Wander Franco had an enormous 2021 before a down season in 2022. Mackenzie Gore showed flashes of his potential when he was healthy, but hasn't been, and will have to adapt to a new environment in Washington. The Blue Jays have a lot of overpaid veterans on their payroll like Trevor Story, Anthony Rendon, and Yoan Moncada, making a combined $36. But if even one of them can return to form, the Blue Jays will have a solid lineup with Yordan Alvarez taking center stage. The pitching staff has a high ceiling with guys like Jacob deGrom, Lucas Giolito, and Blake Snell, but it could still use some work in UFA. They still have an outstanding prospect like Marcelo Mayer in the farm, but not much behind him, as they have the 9th best farm. The Blue Jays are currently on the outside looking into the playoff picture, but if everything goes right, they have a shot to make a run this year, and with that cap space next year, it looks to be the first of many.
I like how all you guys have your sleeper pick. Mine personally is the Blue Jays. I really think they can put it all together. Anyway, at number 9, we have the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles have a few stars on the roster like Mike Trout and Garrett Cole, but lack the controllable quality youth needed to go for a championship in 2023. Despite entering the offseason with not a lot of cap space, the Orioles came out swinging and spending big signing guys like Max Fried and Jeremy Pena. Losing Xander Bogaerts certainly makes this lineup not as strong as it was, but a hopefully healthy Chris Bryant and Eloy Jimenez may give this lineup a major boost. After Cole and Fried in the rotation, the Orioles have guys like Tony Gonsolin and Luis Severino to make a solid rotation. Daniel Bard and Alexis Diaz may keep the Orioles competitive in the relief categories, but overall, after the stars on this roster, there isn't very much depth. The Orioles have a very solid farm system led by Josh Jung and Jason Dominguez. Jung may be up with the Orioles taking starts at 3B this year. The Orioles have pieces needed to build a championship roster, but lack the depth to compete with the top dogs.
In a similar situation at number 10, we have the Milwaukee Brewers. With guys like Bryce Harper, Bobby Witt Jr., Freddie Freeman, and Spencer Strider, it can be hard not to like the potential of this roster. Strider has the makings to be an ace for years to come, and alongside Carlos Rodon and Freddie Peralta, the Brewers seem to have a great rotation. However, with Edwin Diaz's injury in the World Baseball Classic earlier today, the saves category may be a bit dry for them for most of, if not all of 2023. The offense has some question marks as well. Harper is a phenomenal centerpiece, but with him being out until July, at the very least, they will need to rely on Freeman and Witt a lot more than they'd like to. They may also turn to Javier Baez to have a big bounce-back year for them in his contract year. Outside of the 4 players I already mentioned, the Brewers have a lot of guys who have the capability to be real fantasy contributors but haven't been either for one reason or another. Guys like Jared Walsh, Michael Conforto, Marcell Ozuna, and Matt Chapman. The Brewers have a very solid farm and hope to boost it next offseason.
Winding us down at number 11, we have the Chicago White Sox. It can be hard to stay competitive with $21 of dead money in one season. While the White Sox have a lot of controllable youth up with the big club, a lot of the guys they've signed haven't been able to pull it together. Daniel Lynch, Trevor Larnach, Garrett Crochet, Michael Kopech, and Ian Anderson as just a few examples here. The lineup looks pretty solid, with Machado leading the squad and Albies and Goldschmidt short behind him. They have many players capable of putting up solid seasons like Tim Anderson, Kyle Schwarber, William Contreras, and Seiya Suzuki. In the rotation, the White Sox roll out newly acquired ace Aaron Nola, who just came off a terrific 2022, pairing him with Kyle Wright and Clayton Kershaw. The White Sox also have a very solid farm system with guys like Endy Rodriguez, Robert Hassel, and Oswald Peraza, who may be up with them this year. The White Sox have the foundation to build a very good roster, but will need the young players they've signed to take a step forward in order to compete in 2023.
Finishing us off at number 12, we have the Los Angeles Angels. The Angels have $37 committed to bad contracts this year, paying Aroldis Chapman, Chris Paddock, Corey Kluber, and J.D. Martinez. However, they do have reasons to be optimistic. Aaron Judge at $13 for the next 2 seasons is a steal. If he can come anywhere close to his 2022 production, Tyler Glasnow looks to pitch his first season in his second year of a $5 4-year extension, and guys like Taylor Ward and David Bednar can certainly keep up their 2022 paces. The rotation is incredibly bleak outside of Glasnow, though, with Kyle Hendricks and John Means behind him. The lineup has bright spots like Aaron Judge, Carlos Correa, and Dalton Varsho. However, with Kelenic and Adele on the bench, this lineup was supposed to be a lot better if they had lived up to their prospect profiles. The Angels can also bet on an Austin Meadows bounce back to help them have another piece people would want to trade for. In the farm system, the Angels took their new top prospect, Elly De La Cruz, second overall in the minor league draft. However, behind him, it looks incredibly bleak with Gabriel Moreno, Cade Cavalli, and Heston Kjerstad. With shining pieces, the Angels have some guys with value, but overall lack the prowess needed to make a playoff run in 2023.
Well, guys, there you have it. The complete Swingman Fields Dynasty League 2023 Power Rankings brought to you by FantasySP.com. We wish you all luck heading into UFA and the season. Feel free to let us know if you like more videos like this to keep the league fresh, new, and entertaining. This is Greg Amsinger with Harold Reynolds and Dan O'Dowd, and we thank you for tuning in to this special episode of MLB Tonight.